everybody, and welcome back to Blue Jays Today, coming to you from the Sports Interaction Studio, where we always got something to say about the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm your host, Adam Peddle.
And I'm your host, Nicholas Playlog. And in this one, folks, we're going to be doing kind of an overall umbrella preview of the Toronto Blue Jays' upcoming offseason. There is a lot of things that could and should happen with this team. Obviously, Bichette is at the forefront right now of everyone's minds. But what's going on with that closing situation? What's going on with some of those bigger free agents right now, like the Kyle Tuckers of the world and, Murakami, who the Toronto Blue Jays right now are being linked to. We're going to be talking about all of those things. And then later, as this offseason progresses, we're going to be slowly diving in a little bit deeper to every single one of those topics, breaking it down, talking about the likelihood of it happening with the Toronto Blue Jays. So if you want to keep up to date with the Toronto Blue Jays offseason, this is your spot. Hit that subscribe button. That is your best chance to see these videos in the future. Let's immediately transition right now and take a look at that Toronto Blue Jays payroll. Who is going to be under contract for us next year?
Yeah, a lot of guys still under contract. You know, and a lot of people have been talking about running it back and whatnot. Well, there's not a lot of guys that we really need to convince to come back to the Blue Jays, one of which, Shane Bieber, is already coming back on a $16 million player option, which is absolutely freaking awesome. Now, the boys that are obviously gone right now for the Toronto Blue Jays, you've got guys like Bichette, Sir Anthony Dominguez, Ty France. You got Max Scherzer leaving, Chris Bassett, Isaiah kind of Falefo. Those are the dudes that are kind of leaving right now. And honestly, if you ask me, and no offense to these guys, it feels like there's a lot of replaceability in those names. You know, these are two depth starting pitchers that you need to go replace. You got two guys coming off the bench in IKF and Ty France. The big name, however, is Bichette. I think that's going to be the primary focus for the Toronto Blue Jays. You can go and kind of find your ways to replace those other guys. Very hard to replace a guy, Bichette, that could lead the league in hits every single year.
Yeah, like if we're going to use this video as kind of like a roadmap here, everybody, then I would say like step number one for the Toronto Blue Jays this offseason is to, at the very least, figure out what's going on with Bichette, right? You got to know, are we going to be capable of getting him back? Because you don't want to be chasing your tail the entirety of the offseason trying to get him back, and then, January 15th rolls around, and there he is signing with the LA Dodgers, and you're left there flat-footed, not knowing what's going on. Obviously, I want to see Bichette come back to this team because what he provides to the Toronto Blue Jays is just, it's incredible, right? The reason that we were one pitch away from winning the World Series is because this guy hit a 3-run jack earlier in the ball game, right? We never would have been there had he not done this. Maybe it would have hurt less, actually, if he had. But either way, I digress. You need to have Bichette back on this ball team. But if you can't get him, if he's going to be choosing to go somewhere else, one of the New York teams, Philadelphia, one of the, you know what I mean? I'm naming names here, but like if he does do that, then I want to know about it earlier, sooner rather than later. So then if you are the Toronto Blue Jays, you can have the time, you can have the flexibility to go and to pivot and to maybe fill that spot with somebody else.
For sure. And we'll talk about one other option that could be out there that people have kind of been bringing up to us in this recent coming days. But yeah, I mean, if you're out there wondering if Bichette is going to come back to the Blue Jays, I've seen a lot of comments and a lot of concern of a lot of people thinking, oh my God, I don't know if Bichette's going to come back. Well, you know, rest assured, Bichette does want to stay with one franchise his entire career. He's made that very, very clear. Obviously, that's the Toronto Blue Jays. And he obviously wants to play with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. He's made that very, very clear. Now, I know there's some rumors out there that maybe he wants to go play for the Yankees. Ooh, maybe he said that very quietly. Let's take what he said for word value. Our good friend Keegan Masson over there on MLB.com has gotten to know Bichette a little bit through his time, being a journalist over there, being very close to him, interviewing him on a day-to-day basis during the regular season. And he says it how it is. Bichette says it how it is, right? Like he what he says, he means it, right? So when he says he wants to stay with the Blue Jays, he does. Now with the Blue Jays, you can't lowball him with that, right? Just because he wants to come here, you got to go offer him the most amount of money that is on the table. He's not dumb. He's not going to take a pay cut probably to be here. You got to equal, if not greater, any other offer. And the Blue Jays are able to do that. I think after a great postseason run and a great year they had, they should have the money to not only get Bichette back and maybe go spend a little bit more in the free agency.
To be completely honest, I do think Toronto is going to be the #1 favorite for Bichette, and they should be until some of those other like ridiculous rumors that are inevitably going to come down the pipeline show up. Right now, I'm actually feeling very confident that they bring back Bichette. Obviously, there is a chance because it is free agency and you never know what could happen, but that is going to be the number one top of the concern for Toronto. Figure out what's happening with Bo and ideally bring him back. But of course, that's not the only thing that's going to be transpiring this offseason, because should they miss out on Bo Bichette, you'll have to figure out how to pivot. And what could be coming if they do miss out on Bo Bichette is potentially Alex Bregman. This is a name that's being floated right now with Toronto, and he'll probably still be floated even with Bichette still on the board. Like, I mean, Toronto's going to be on the phone for a lot of these guys.
Oh,
they're
100%.
going to be exploring all of these options. I love Bo. I know that you guys all love Bo, but if the best chance to win a World Series next year is by going out and getting Alex Bregman on a 1 or 2 year deal, and then also going and getting somebody else, then maybe that's the route that they want to take. But what certainly could be coming is that I think you're going to be seeing a big name, whether it's Bo or whether it's Bregman or somebody else that we're not even talking about. Someone is going to be coming into that infield and coming into the top of the lineup to provide some hits for the Toronto Blue Jays.
I completely agree, and there's a lot of names out there, and I don't think the Blue Jays would stop the momentum right here. It just doesn't make a lot of sense for them to actually go out and like have the year they had and not go and replace, if they did lose Bo Bichette. As much as it would hurt me because I love Bo Bichette, they're going to make a smart business decision and bring them all back. Like Alex Bregman off top of the board right there, obviously with the pre-AAV from last year. Pete Alonso, rooming around him. Now that'll be a very interesting situation with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. at first base, because you know there's also other guys like Josh Naylor that could play first base, and people float around the idea of bringing the Canadian over. But as you can see, there's so many great players.
Cody Bellinger has been a name that we've talked about ad nauseum here on Blue Jays Today, and there's always been what feels to be some type of connection there. So I can assure you that Toronto is going to be hyper aggressive in going out and not only pursuing Bo Bichette, but also some of these other big names as well. And if you don't want to take our word for it, that's perfectly fine, because over there on MLB Network, they are thinking the exact same thing. This is a clip right here. I highly recommend you go take a look at this. So look up MLB Network on Twitter, go take a look at this clip. But effectively what they're saying is that the Toronto Blue Jays are going to be extremely aggressive this offseason. They do bring up the idea of Bo Bichette. They also bring up the idea of Kyle Tucker, thinking that he might make a lot of sense for the Toronto Blue Jays.
It does make a lot of sense.
For me, hell yeah. You're talking about an individual right here that had an 841 OPS, a career OPS of 865. Ever since he's come into the league, I don't think he's ever actually been bad. Kyle Tucker has quite literally always been good. He runs the base paths really well. He had 25 stolen bags last year. That's something that you know, if you've been a longtime fan of this show and this program, I've always been saying, I want to have more individuals running the base pass really well. This is somebody that you could put at the top of that lineup you'd feel really, really good about. I do feel like it would be a little bit too crazy for me to think that we'd be getting Kyle Tucker and Bo Bichette back. It feels like it's one or the other right there. But let's be clear, they are going to be in on this guy's market as well, and they are going to be extremely aggressive, as a lot of these people are alluding to.
Yeah, I mean, look at the last 3 off seasons of the Toronto Blue Jays. You're going after Soto, you're going after Ohtani, right? Like, you're going after some big names out there, and those were seasons we're coming off of where we weren't really doing, like, obviously, yeah, we squeaked into the wild card, we got swept. 2024, we didn't even do anything, right? We didn't even make the postseason. Now you're coming off a World Series Game 7. So if they're going to be aggressive and actually nail that final nail in the coffin of getting it done, this would be the season, right? Because the Blue Jays, people have talked about, yeah, we got a little bit of leverage right now. Who's to say that like people don't want to come play for Toronto? Obviously, geographical and locations of family, that all plays a factor in free agency, but we look like a great place to go play some great ball. Kyle Tucker, like you mentioned, fits the mold of the Toronto Blue Jays, and he's actually having a little bit lesser year than what he usually does, right? An 841 OPS. So I think the Blue Jays are going to be in on the market. They're going to be aggressive. We'll probably be somewhere in December, January, if he hasn't signed yet, probably be linked to him in some capacity. We're going to be calling the phones for Kyle Tucker. But realistically, probably not going to get him. Probably going to settle more in the camp of Bo Bichette, and then maybe some helpful pieces like Ty France and IKF. Those
maybe not. You know, like I genuinely think that this is the best chance that you're going to see, because Toronto has always been, especially in these off seasons, they've always been one of the 5 teams that's linked to the big names, right? When it's Shohei Ohtani, when it's Juan Soto, when it's any of them, right? Any of them. Toronto's one of the 5 teams, and usually those 5 teams are Toronto, Philadelphia, LA, and then both of the New Yorks. Those are kind of the typical 5. Sometimes you get San Francisco in there. Sometimes Boston gets in there as well. But it's almost always going to be like a mix and match of those 5. And Toronto is always going to be in there. And to your point, this is the best opportunity for them to go out and get some of these guys and get them across the finish line. Because a lot of the times we've been coming up just short of some of these big names, and then you lose out to a team like New York or like LA. And I argue that a big reason for that is because, well, they got a lot more rings in the cabinet than we do, or
pedigree.
Exactly. Like there's
Location.
a lot more promise of a ring over there than here. But I don't think you can say that anymore. And there's been a lot of stuff coming out recently from the wives and the girlfriends of the Toronto Blue Jays. They fucking love. The Wags. The Wags love it in Toronto, and there's something to that, right? Like, when the boys are out there getting drinks on the course in the offseason, when the ladies are out there, sipping on their martinis, like, afternoon brunch or what have you, that's going to be talked about, right? They are going to be discussing this. So to be completely honest with you, it's a long shot, and I don't want to get myself overly hyped up, but I would argue that this is the best chance that we've had in a long time to go and get somebody like a Kyle Tucker.
Would agree, right? And again, we got to temper expectations, but also don't completely X-day it out. And don't give it a 100%, right? With one or the other, right? Anything could happen, just like anything could happen this 2025 season. Who would have thought that we'd be in the World Series Game 7?
Also,
right?
just to cap up all that, just thought of this right now. 1 more year left on the George Springer contract. Gonna need somebody in that outfield, right?
And that's something I've thought about too, right? When we're thinking about, okay, we get Bichette back, but what other bats could we get? Obviously, Kyle Tucker is incredible, but there's other options too. There is a Kyle Schwarber out there in the world. You want some pop to go play a corner outfield. I know he's somewhat been a DH as of late, but you want to go a guy to get some corner outfield job, maybe 3-4 years, whatever it might be. Go offer him some money. Yeah, I do think he's going back to Philly, if I'm being really frank. I think they'll probably offer him the money, and he feels like a Philly for life, but you never know what could happen. There's going to be some sort of replacement of bat in there in some capacity, I would imagine.
And this isn't clickbait, folks. Toronto is going to be in on all these conversations, and I can safely say it right here. I do anticipate that they are going to make some wild, unexpected moves. One of those moves might even be going out and getting another big-time closer.
Ooh.
Jeff Hoffman, he had stretches where he was incredible. He had stretches where he was completely unreliable this season. And I said it, and I hate to be proven right sometimes, but I said that there was going to be a key game in the playoffs that he was going to blow, and it just so happened that it was Game 7 of the World Series. And it sucks that happened. It really, really does. But Ross Atkins in his postseason press conference left the door open a little bit and thinking that, well, Jeff Hoffman, he could be open to any role right now, and they could be open to any role, anything that makes them better. I would argue that Edwin Diaz, somebody who is in the complete and clear upper echelon of closers, would make this team better, and he is a free agent.
Yeah, and again, he might be opting out to try and get some more money from Steve Cohen. He's been a twin, or not twin, excuse me, a Met basically his entire career, other than Seattle the 3 years he first came in the league. But hey, if you want to go out and you want to make an offer, do it. Now, I know there's some concern online about going and getting, relief pitching, and it could be volatile because, let's be frank, volatile pitching or relief pitching is very volatile from year to year.
Not
but
this
Edwin
guy,
Diaz,
though.
exactly. But Edwin Diaz has been proving it year after year after year. I think he's had one bad year. Yeah, one bad year in 2019. Ever since then, you could rely on Edwin Diaz. So if the Blue Jays wanted to go make that move, this feels like the only other guy in that free agent market that would demand the closing job over a Jeff Hoffman.
Yeah, it would be clear and obvious at that point. And I think if you're Jeff Hoffman, you'd have to, kind of throw your hands up and go, all right, I'm okay with being the setup guy right there. I think I said this on a recent podcast, but there's a small handful of individuals at that closer situation. Josh Hader, Edwin Diaz, Emmanuel Clase when he was playing baseball.
Rip.
Yeah, literally rip to that guy. But there's a small handful of individuals at that closing spot that you can rely on a year-to-year basis. Whereas, to your point, a lot of the other bullpen guys are very volatile. We saw that volatility from Jeff Hoffman. 2 straight years of dominance in Philly, comes over to Toronto. At the end of the day, he had some great moments, but he still finished with a 4.5 ERA. And that's just not something that you want from your closer. Edwin Diaz, I can knock on all the wood, I could safely say I would not see a 4.5 ERA coming from that guy. It just isn't going to happen. He's in the upper echelon, and he would command the closing role.
Now, I might be digressing a little bit, but to go off of that Ross Atkins comment too, even if we don't get Edwin Diaz, I do wish the Blue Jays do implement some sort of hey, we're not married to your role type of strategy. I want to see what they did in the postseason, where it's like, okay, I want my best guys versus your best guys. So like right now, our best guy in the postseason was Jeff Hoffman, and he was going up against the best guys on the other side of things, right?
Yeah.
So like I completely agree. Like you got to play that strategy, and even if we don't get Edwin Diaz that commands a closing role, I do hope moving forward that we just play the best guys so we don't end up in situations.
I think that he's leaving the door open, right? I think that he's even
that's
on
good
the
on him.
roster. It's like you think about on the roster right now. Well, we got Louis Varland under contract forever. He's got stuff that could play as a closer, right? And Jeff Hoffman, I mean, he's not getting any younger type thing. So maybe you do want to start even flirting with a transition like that if you didn't go out and pick up somebody like Edwin Diaz. However, for now, from a free agent standpoint, they might be looking at that closing spot. Now, we're going to wrap this whole thing up here by talking about another individual who they are currently being tied to. MLB Deadline News here tweets out, some rival executives say that the Yankees and Blue Jays are two teams to watch on Japanese international free agent infielder Munetaka Murakami. Now, that is per Ben Nicholson-Smith, all right? We usually don't bring this stuff up if it's just some random account saying that, but Ben Nicholson-Smith is obviously, he knows his stuff, he's tied into this, and if he's saying that they might be interested in Munetaka Murakami, then they might be interested in Munetaka Murakami. And from my understanding of things, they've actually been monitoring this guy for a long period of time. They've been looking at him for a while. I remember the World Baseball Classic. A lot of people were talking about just how incredible of a baseball player this kid is going to be. And since then, he's had some really good seasons. Last year in 2025, he had an OPS of 1.051, a batting average of 286, and ended up hitting 24 home runs with 52 RBIs. It's a smaller sample size, only 69 games. Now, one concern that you brought up is that he was struggling with the heater. So anything over 93 miles per hour, he apparently wasn't very good at.
He had a sub 100 batting average.
Sub 100 batting average, which feels insane to me because it's like, how the hell did you play that well then if that was the case?
Maybe he's just scouting reports.
Maybe he's hitting like 600 on everything else. I'm not
maybe
sure.
Maybe Bichette expands his zone and pokes the other way. But like either way, like maybe you could be concerned about that for sure. Because in the big leagues, he's getting a steady diet of heaters. You know, I guarantee wherever he signs to, he's getting heaters the entire time until he's proven otherwise, right? But yeah, like the Blue Jays could be in on this guy, and I know that there's history in the past of like Eastern Coast teams having a lot of trouble signing international free agents from Japan. Usually they go to San Diego or LA Dodgers, as we all know, like anywhere over there in that kind of West Coast area because it is closer geographically to Japan, and they have a large Japanese community over there. So it is going to be a lot tougher. But I mean, hey. If that's the talent you want to look for, we're talking about infield help, right?
Oh, hell yeah.
What better guy who hit 56 homers when he was 22 years old in 2022 to go sign and play
That's
the
thing. I mean, the talent is so abundantly clear with this kid. And also, too, he'd be 26 years old. I mean, there's some MLB players that don't debut until they're 26, right? Like, that's a real thing that happens in Canada, in America. So he would be like a nice, young, exciting rookie that you'd have for, I believe people were considering him to be like a $150 million guy, and you'd have him for several seasons. So like you could kind of have him become part of the core here in Toronto. Point being, everybody, this is going to be a nuts free agency.
Absolutely.
All right. So I hope that this kind of acted as a good umbrella to just give you a sense as to everything that we think could be on the radar for them. And we didn't even talk about the idea of going out and getting a starting pitcher. But I think that that's also going to be completely at top of mind.
Yeah, and like look at the needs of the Toronto Blue Jays. Like obviously offensively, we're the number one team in batting average, on base, top 5 in runs scored throughout the whole 2025 season. Like that, like again, go get Bichette back. You kind of complete that puzzle yet again. And then you look over at the pitching side of things, it's clear. It's bullpen, it's starting pitching. So if I'm Ross Atkins in the front office, that's what I got to prioritize after Bichette, because you talked about the first step kind of thing.
Yeah.
Bichette's number 1. Go get that starting pitching help and go get that relief pitching help, because as we know, the starting pitching is starting to turn over a little bit. You're going to have Kevin Gausman up after next year. You're going to have Jose Barrios up in a couple of years. He has a player option he might opt out of. You got Trey Savage coming up, but you do need to turn over that rotation. You do need to always turn over that bullpen. So for me, that is the job that needs to get done once Bichette's signed.
I agree. And you know what? Even if it's, I'm actually gonna move away the Bo Bichette term, or I guess like just looking at it as Bo Bichette, because now that I'm thinking about it, I guess as we're sitting here, I'm thinking one key offensive player. You need somebody to replicate that. Like if it happens to be Kyle Tucker, then it's like, okay, well now we don't need Bo Bichette anymore, but you do need to take somebody of that caliber and plug him into that role. And then after that, give me one more starter and probably give me a handful of really good bullpen arms as well. But folks, let us know your thoughts about all this in the comments down below. We are going to be diving into all of these topics a lot deeper starting tomorrow. So starting tomorrow, we will be talking about all of these things as the rumors trickle out, as we get closer to the winter meetings, when we get closer to Christmas time. You're going to start to see some of these things develop. So if you're enjoying this type of content, you want to keep up to date, please hit that like, smash that subscribe button. Let us know your thoughts down below. $4 a month becoming a YouTube member. Shouldn't think of all of our current YouTube members. You guys are amazing.
Guys, thank you so much for watching.
And as always,
Go Jays, go!